Speaking of building football teams, a lot of guys who are at camp who showed up. We've been seeing a lot of scuffles, a lot of fights with joint practices. Obviously, players, you've been around the game a long time. You've seen it a while. Memo was sent out, I believe, by the NFL last month to the teams about potentially fining them, and now they have fined both organizations $200,000. What's your thoughts on these fines going out to the Giants and Lions?
I mean, I think the only way you get people's attention is through coin. You got to find people. Look, this is ridiculous. You can't have fights. You're not getting anywhere. I mean, do you realize how either one of those players could have got injured? I mean, you're throwing punches at guys with helmets on. How ridiculous is that? You can break a hand in an instant. I think it's probably the right thing to do. We don't want to see the fights. We want to work on being a professional. Being a professional is, look, we know football is a violent sport. We know there's a lot of hostility that goes in there. But part of understanding this is having poise. Part of understanding in the heat of battle, you have to control yourself. You can't have a penalty at the most critical time. And when you do stuff like this just lends itself to having a dumb penalty. You know, it's like Parcells used to say, we're too dumb to be any good. But we do stuff like that. That's not worth it. And I think the league's right to fine people. I really do.
Lombo, my biggest issue with that, and I appreciate the fact the NFL is trying to get ahead of it because we've seen this over the past few years with the evolution of how many joint practices are taking place around the NFL. It seems like everybody's doing it now, where back in the day there was only a couple teams that were doing it. But we all know that are on this call, like, these coaches love this. In some positions, like some guys, they're questioning whether or not they're tough or whatever. Like, will this guy be able to handle being in the NFL? Is he a dog? That's the type of guy I want. So whenever there's an opportunity for another team to potentially have a fight happen, players are going to take that opportunity, I think, every once in a while, especially at the bottom half of the roster. I understand composure and everything. That's a real game. These are practice situations. Everybody kind of understands it. I don't know how you fix it. I know, like, the finding of the teams is certainly the start here for the NFL, but it's a tough sell, I think, for some guys, especially in the dog days of training camp, like, to not – I think it's going to be tough because own teams fight each other. So let alone with other – like, I think it's going to be tough, Lombo. And I understand we're trying to make
it is, but you got to emphasize
so we can evaluate and everything.
Yeah, like that's uncalled for. That cheap shot's uncalled for. You got to have poise. And to me, you know, once a player does that, get him off the field. Just send him off the field. If you're going to act like this and react like that and push somebody like that, that's a 15-yard penalty. You know, you're going to cost your team. You can't be that way. We got that. Look, you're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. I get what you're saying. People are going to be volatile. People are going to be emotional. Young players want to show they're tough enough. But show you're tough enough between the whistle.
I guess.
Amen. In theory, that sounds good, I think. That's what I'm saying. We're all agreeing that in theory that sounds good. I don't know how actionable it is, though. AJ, that's like,
yeah, how dumb is that fight there? Look, both guys are swinging.
Stupid.
Oh, yeah. Hands. They better have open fit. They better tell them, hey, it better be open.
Stupid thing
palm
of all
strikes.
time. I mean,
if you are going to fight,
team.
Palm strike them, Lombo. If you are going to fight, don't be throwing those closed fist punches to that hard helmet. But I guess the Guardian Cap may help with that. Who knows? But do you think Lombo? It's just the fact that these fights kept happening. We just all of a sudden you open your phone up, boom, here's another fight. Oh, it's the same day. Oh, the next day they keep fighting. Is that why the $200K came down? I would imagine other teams, if they get one little scuffle, they're not fining them $200K.
Well, I think the league basically said, since you guys can't handle it, I have to. It's kind of like, you know, you guys aren't going to handle it, we'll handle it. And I think that's what the league did. And so now that $200K, I mean, look, you know, that might seem like not a lot of money to a billion-dollar industry, but I'm sure it does affect them. And it comes down on the head coaches. Like, I think, to me, it's their job to ensure that this doesn't happen. And I know that it's not they're coaching it. They're asking their teams not to do it, but there's got to be a way to get around it. I mean, you got to have discipline and you got to have self-control. Two of the biggest requirements to be a good team.
I agree completely, and I appreciate that the NFL is looking out, because I think a part of it is like player safety as well. Because to all of our points, like, somebody breaks a hand there, what do we even? You just cost yourself an opportunity at, like, potential life-changing career. But then I just think there's going to have to be a conversation amongst the entire league and practices about it, because I think that is just a recipe for a fight at some point, every one of those joint practices. But this younger generation is much more well-rounded and not as archaic, I guess, as the teams that I was part of, you know, which hopefully is the case. Hopefully.
Probably Lombo. Hey, Ty Schmidt has a great question about something's going on in Philly. I know you're dialed in everything Philly, but Ty has a question for you.
Yeah, Lombo, there was an ESPN article basically talking about the fractured relationship between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, and a lot of the sources were unnamed, so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. But the gist of it was that Sirianni basically was saying, hey, things aren't broke, so why would we try to fix them, while Jalen and Brian Johnson kind of wanted to take the offense to the next step, let Jalen Hurts have a little bit more control and kind of call things on his own. And it kind of sounds like, hey, these guys, they may respect each other, they may not, but at the end of the day, they're not really fans of each other. Let's leave it that way. How big of a deal do you think this is going into this season? And will bringing someone like Kellen Moore in kind of keep this at bay, or are they kind of screwed once this kind of stuff starts leaking out, this early in the preseason?
I thought it was interesting, Hurt's comment. He didn't really deny it. He kind of let it go. And earlier this summer, during June mini camps, they asked him what the offense was, and he said it was 95% Kellen Moore's. So it's a little bit like he doesn't seem like he's fully engaged in it. I've watched some of the practice clips because I live here in Philly. He looks really good. He looks like he's moving way better than he did last year in terms of having more burst and acceleration. I mean, let's face it, last year, and A.J. Brown went down. He was averaging 17 yards a catch. 2 years ago, he went down to 13. Same thing with Jalen Smith. His yards per attempt went down. They weren't making the big plays. I think one of the key things of the article was I think Jalen Hurts was really concerned about how people were defending him. And this is why we can't judge quarterbacks too early in their careers. Because what happens is defensive coordinators start to figure out how to play the quarterback. And I think what Jalen Hurts was seeing was he was getting a lot of pressure coming off the defensive left side, his right, forcing him to the left and trying to get him to make a play on the move. And I think that created problems. Remember what Nick Bosa said after they played him. His eye level was down and he was looking at the rush. People scheme for that. And I think his call to Don Martindale to say what was going on, why is this happening to me, why am I getting pushed that way, I think was really telling that the kid saw that he needed to find a way to improve. But that's what's going to be the key here for the Eagles is can they come down the field, make throws. Kellen Moore takes over. Look, 2 years ago, they had a great offense running the football. They scored 204 points in the second quarter. They played from in front on everybody. But when you have this push-tuck thing that they have there, and you have 4 downs to get a first down, it's every time they throw an incomplete pass, they're doing you a favor.
Lombo, what is it like? Okay, their relationship is described as professional now. Now, we don't really know what's true, what's not. We hear things from behind the scenes. We hear anonymous sources. If it is a professional relationship, have you seen that in the NFL to where you can be successful and win Super Bowls if the head coach and the quarterback aren't super tight and don't have like a very, very good relationship?
I think it could work, but I think Nick has other issues, right? Nick's got to control himself on the sideline. Nick has always been an emotional guy. I think, he's got to control himself. Yeah. And then last year, the bigger issue, really, when you watch this team, was their conditioning at the end of the year. Their conditioning. Now, they've changed how they practice. They've speeded up a little bit. There's a little bit harder training camp than they had last year. It's been documented. And I think last year, when you look at that defensive front, whether it's Jordan Davis or Jalen Carter, there was a lot of weight gain going on there. And I think they've made some changes within the framework of their strength and development program to help that. That falls on Nick's feet, too. You got to condition the team for the stretch run. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Nick in a lot of different areas. I think what he's got to do is win the team back that he can correct the problems of last year and not have them face this year.